Hi, this is Mentality Meets. My name is Peter Larkum and I created Mentality last year, launched it back in February, and it is a 1-hour online induction training for everyone. If you want to access, simply go to www.mentality.work. But this is Mentality Meets. So let's begin. But with Mentality Meets, let's just go through a little bit of a health warning with you. Why? Because we will be talking about mental health, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We have no idea what your personal history of mental health is in the context of if you are experiencing mental health illnesses, whether you are supporting people with mental health illnesses. We don't know any information about you. So what we need you to do is just be a little bit aware of what is going on inside of you as we go through this session. Because what Harry and I will be doing is we're going to be kind of talking about a lot of different topics, and we just want to make sure that you stay safe. So if you need to access some help and support, what you have is you have access to something like the Samaritans on 116123. You can give them a call and someone will be able to talk to you in that moment. Or you can text SHOUT to 85258. It's the first 24/7 text service in the UK. And what that will do is you can text SHOUT to that number and then somebody will get back in contact with you. Now on Mentality Meets, we are also promoting the hubofhope.co.uk. Now with the Hub of Hope, it's a website that you can put your postcode in and it will then share with you all the mental health provision that's available in your local area. Now this is fantastic if you are supporting people on the other side of the country, because you can put their postcode in and then it will share the mental health support in their local area. So as we go through this time together, please be aware of what's going on inside of you. Look after yourselves because you are the most important person today. All right, now what I want to do is I want to introduce you to your chat bar. So if you can, find your chat bar and give me 3 pieces of information. Question number 1, what is your name? Question number 2, where in the country are you dialing in from today? And question number 3, Harry, you had a question for our audience. What is your question for the audience?
My question is, why did you tune in today? What was the one single reason you tuned in today?
That's a nice deep question. It could be I just had nothing better to do. It could be I got an email about 15 minutes ago that reminded me to join in. It could be that you actually wanted to hear what we were going to talk about today. So what's your name? Where are you in the world? And why have you logged in? Dave says, here's Dave. He's in his bedroom and it's free, innit? Kaboom. Pete from Hereford. And I made him. I didn't make anyone do anything, I don't think. Joe in Oxfordshire, great host and great guest. Thanks very much. Melissa in Marlow says, love Mentality Meets and always wanting to learn more from other people. Brilliant. Zara says, hey all, it's Zara, dialed in from Cambridge. Been joining since I was on it a few weeks ago. Good to see some familiar faces. So hi Zara, welcome back. Matt in Essex, because Pete asked me. I'm a mental health first aid who lives with anxiety. Brilliant. Hi Matt. Wayne in Bourneville, Birmingham. Saw it on LinkedIn after connecting with Harry recently. So welcome, Wayne. Andy Dobson. Hi. Belgaran. Oh wow. I've got no idea what that is. Vento Belgium. Curiosity made him dial in. I like it. Vicky. Hi, Vicky in Bedford. Interested in finding out how we can do better in our workplace. Yes, good point for getting in. Zara also says, P.S. I'm cross-stitching. My ears are fully attentive though. My eyes are on the canvas. I like it. You got to show us what's going on. So what are you building in there, Zara? Nice. Now that's a fairly substantial thing you're doing there. Great. And then we've got Krista, again, Hereford. Mental health always interesting and continuing to learn. And Andy says, you live there. Where do I live? I have no idea. But I'm Pete. I live in Winchester, Hampshire, which is a lovely place to be. And Harry, where are you dialing in from today?
Southwest London, so Collierswood.
Fantastic. So you know what, Harry, let's kind of pass this over to you. And I would like to ask you just to give us a little bit of information about you and why and how are you joining me on Mentality Meets today? Give us a little bit about your story.
To be honest with you, it's a good question because I don't really know how I've ended up in this position. Talking about mental health, all those kind of key charities and themes and words and everything that you just said then is not something I ever thought I'd be in a position to actually talk about, share an experience of, or be in a position to actually help other people. So unfortunately, in terms of mental health, I stumbled into it without any form of plan or intention to be involved in anything to do with mental health or suicide awareness. So I'm going to give you a bit about my story, and feel free to jump in, Pete, and if you wanted me to lean on particular points further. So I'm going to take this story back about 2.5 years. So I had just moved to London at that point. I originally worked for the Royal Mint, so I was selling gold and silver. It sounded fantastic. It sounded like one of the best jobs you could get, and just left uni and everyone was in awe that I was doing this amazing job and got to travel. I couldn't have been any more down and upset and away from myself if I tried. I was in and out of the doctors every other day trying to work out why on earth I couldn't find any energy or optimism for anything in my life. I just couldn't work it out. I got so frustrated. I remember calling my mum after starting this amazing job thinking I just can't be happy, and I couldn't work it out. And there was this moment where I actually just took a step back and thought, what am I doing? Like, is this what I want to be doing? Is this the right thing for me? And I actually saw a job selling what for me at the time was a cereal bar, a nut bar. I didn't actually even eat the bars, and I hadn't actually heard of them at the time. So I actually went for a job with a company called Kind Snacks. I'm the mental health lead for Kind Snacks today, and I packed up everything in South Wales and took myself to Central London. Was never in my plan. And on the first month of joining the business, so we were based at the time on the South Bank. So my station was Waterloo. So I went into Waterloo just over 2.5 years ago, and I walked to the office. We were in a shared office space in a WeWork. We were a tiny business at the time. I walked down on my normal commute. This was about 4 weeks into the job. I went up the escalator and sat in a meeting room. And I was about to have a meeting with my colleague, and we sat down, and out of the glass panoramic window that was in front of me were the silhouette mannequins of real people on top of a building. I felt sick. I thought they were real people. My eyesight is not incredible, so for the life of me, I thought they were real people, and I went straight to the panoramic window, and we stopped the meeting. Was like, what on earth is that in front of us? It took us about 30 seconds of just start looking at these people standing on the roof that we realized they weren't moving. And we went onto our phones and tried to work out what it was we were looking at. At this point, other people were also looking out of this glass panoramic window at this large building in front of us. So it was the ITV Tower Studios. This was the building we were looking at. So we typed in people on Tower ITV, and I was just completely lost for words from what I witnessed and what I was exposed to. So they weren't real people on the roof. They were mannequins. They were representations of real people who had lost their loved ones to suicide. It was called Project 84, and it was a stunt by the charity, the Campaign Against Living Miserably. And it was called Project 84 because 84 men in that year would take their lives every single week in the UK. That number has since gone up. I unfortunately lost my dad to suicide at the age of 12. I'm 25 now, and at that point in my life, I had never introduced the fact that I'd lost my dad to suicide to anyone new ever. When I witnessed what had happened when I searched it on Google, I was exposed to real life stories of other people who had lost someone extremely close to them, whether that's a friend or family member, to suicide. They were real life stories and real life people, and I just remember looking here and then also looking out in front of me with also a colleague that I didn't really know that well. I was just, my chest just went completely tight, and my mouth was just, I couldn't find any words or anything. And that day, hand on heart, without any form of exaggeration, completely changed my whole life. I started to think about what had happened to me. I started to share a bit more about me and not this fake version of me that I would tell people for 11 years previous. And I just started to tell people what happened. and joining a new business, there was something about that particular moment in time that I just felt so compelled to just tell people more. So unfortunately, not unfortunately, I grew up in Cornwall, in St Ives, which is, you know, one of the prettiest places in the UK, but a very small place. And when something the size of what happened to my family happens, it kind of, the association was very heavy with suicide. And my dad and everyone was like, your will, son, would be the first thing anyone would ever say. My dad was a popular, he was a fireman, popular man of the town, electrician, and the kind of timing of what happened when I was younger was, I lost my dad, yes, but actually lost entire family at the same time. There was a lot of hearsay, blame around the town at the time. It just came to the point where actually that was harder to live with than actually what happened. And I never really had time to think about what happened ever, I would say, until that point that I actually physically moved away and found that separation to my hometown, which is really sad. And it got to the point where even my family members would share stories and reasons as to why my dad decided to take his own life. And it was in the Sun, Mirror, Evening Standard, across various other newspapers, naming me and creating a story around suicide and my particular people's reasonings as to why it happened. I was named in them at the age of 12 and just could not rid that association ever out of my head. So for that whole 11 years, just went about making a fake version of myself. When I was at uni, if I was dating, for instance, I would just tell a lie as if my dad was alive. I would say the story, and that would go on. I mean, people knew me for years, and they just thought my dad was real. I never wanted to let them in. Wow. And then, that all changed when it got to that, when hearing other people's stories, and actually it wasn't just me who's in that awful situation, but sometimes the secludedness of where I was in my head and physically made me feel it was just me. Very long introduction, Pete.
Oh, Harry. I don't know about anyone else, but I am transfixed by this story. This is just incredible and amazing stuff that you're sharing with us. And a quick question out to the audience. Does anyone else remember that campaign? I remember that campaign, and I had no idea that it was about 2 years ago. But when they put the mannequins up in London on the building to represent the number of people that would complete suicide every week. And I can remember how much of an impact it had on me as a mental health first aid instructor at the time. And what you have just shared right there has made me realize how easy it is to see statistics as statistics and forget the people who are impacted by this every day, all the time, you know. And what you've just shared is just quite incredible in the context of your story. So thank you for that introduction. Gosh, how do we kind of move it? And what do I want to ask you on this? Because there are so many different things. So firstly, kind of, you started talking about your story, therefore, only a couple of years ago. And what has been the reaction that you have found from people as you started to share more about your story and your history and other things like that?
Yeah, it's such a, there's two different ways I think to best answer it. So when I started sharing it internally at Kind, there was something about the people who I was sharing it with, and I think it's something I haven't really spoke about a huge amount over the last couple of years, but there was such a genuine quality in the people that I met at that moment in time that just wanted to get to know me, and I felt completely comfortable, and there was going to be no stigma attached to, because they didn't know anything about me. I was going in with a blank canvas for the first time in my life. I was able to just share it with a true nature of how it impacted me. And the level of support, I mean, I can't be more grateful for a group of people in my life. They are the most genuine, caring group of people who have always had my back when sharing my story, and they just, as a company, it's given me a platform to help more people by using my story. And there's connections with Mental Health First Aid, and we partnered with Calm. We have got very big plans with what we want to do with a brand in terms of reaching more people with mental health awareness. So it's just been, from a work perspective, it's just been unbelievable, the level of support. And at the beginning, sharing this story for the first time I remember it in how I shared it online for the first time. When you risk it and you're kind of out in the open, and that feeling is just, you put yourself completely on the line. You don't know what the reaction is going to be. But the reaction is just so powerful, and it's like the most rewarding part of it when people say that they have gained from hearing that, or they've passed on that message, or the Calm helpline, or whatever it might be that I'm sharing that particular time to someone else. That's the whole reason I love doing this now, and almost found like a passion for doing it. So I think just when you hear people's stories back to what you say, it encourages you to do more and more and more, and reach people who won't necessarily be able to talk about it freely and comfortably, for whatever reason that might be. And I think, interestingly, maybe if I look at it from a Cornwall perspective, like very rural, the way that this messaging lands with people is extremely, extremely different. Whenever I do get home, people will just want to drag me to one side and just talk to me about things that they faced in their life, which is incredible. I feel kind of appreciative that people can be able to do that, and I just wish there was more services and platforms and groups available to everyone to have those kind of connections. So it kind of A, inspires me, but B, wants to do more in areas that are harder to reach outside of London, I think. But from a business perspective, it's just been incredible, and I hope that continues.
Right. But let's kind of go back and see what people are saying, because there's some amazing stuff coming out on the chat, and I don't want to miss it. Cool. Melissa just kind of says, "Wow, this is so powerful," and Dave then goes on and says, "Fair bloody play to you, mate. Good on you for sharing. More power to you." Zara says, "Wow, this is seriously unfair, and I'm so sorry that you experienced this." And Chris says, "Yes, I remember the campaign well." Matt says, "Yes, remember Project 84. Annie says, "Don't recall it, but it's still a massive number. 84 people per week is a massive number in the context of suicide." Chris is saying it's so powerful as it came out of the blue. Thank you so much for sharing. Melissa then puts, "I have an adult client who lost their parent many, many years ago to suicide as a young person. It can have a huge impact on family and friends, and really, really tough." And just saying thank you for sharing. It is such a powerful story, what you're sharing. And I love the fact that what you have found through your work colleagues and through your workplace is a receptive vibe coming from people, where you've had that support and had that care. And now this is, again, just a quick question out to our audience, just to kind of get a little bit of a feel. If you have shared your personal story around mental health or your mental health journey, how has it been received? Have you had a positive engagement from it, or has it been met in a negative context? I want to find out if it's either. So do share if you've had the positive or if you've had the negative, because I think it's important to hear those different sides of the story. And so, Harry, you wrote a book recently and launched a book recently. How long ago was that? And just give us a little bit of an overview of your book, if that's even possible. I don't know. Yeah,
it was an article on the Book of Man, so not quite a book. Hopefully one day, but just an article on the Book of Man for now. But it's I've always, that was really interesting doing that. It was the start of lockdown, actually. I remember just putting my head down and thinking, and I had the first paragraph together for ages, and I left it for months. So I literally sat here, and these things only have a 4-hour battery life. So I sat here and just got as much as I could down with the charge, and I managed to just complete it. And I look back at the article now, and there are spelling mistakes, there are errors throughout, and I sent it over to the guys at the Book of Man, and they just wanted to publish it. They didn't want to make any changes whatsoever. So I actually only read it back once, because I thought it was going to be a first edit and then come back to me and then make changes. I didn't know what this world was like. So, but the response has been amazing. One of the major reasons I did want to do it is with the media coverage I mentioned when I was younger, I you know, I'm still angry by it. I mean, I read back through some of those articles, and there is no signposting to anyone who might read that, who it might triggers it. Like, you did an amazing job at the beginning of this, signposting to amazing groups. There is nothing in that. I know it was 13 years ago, but it's still online. It's still there, and I just felt compelled to actually share the real kind of impact that had, not just the article, but the whole kind of hearsay and blame culture that was created around it. So I enjoy writing. I enjoy writing about my experiences. And something really weird actually over the last few months is I found myself talking about what happened to me more, and I feel sometimes that I get a physical kind of show of pain when I talk about it. It's really, really unique, and I've never actually quite kind of understood what it is. But I find that this is, for instance, my neck, right? So I can only just tie it to this amount. I can't do it all the way. My dad unfortunately hung himself, and it's more I talk about it, more I write about it, I actually get physical pain after. It's really unique, and it's just something that it's been really kind of enlightening since I've been writing. So I'd love definitely to hear, Peter, if you've come across anything like that in terms of physical displays of pain when talking about mental health.
Oh, wow. So yeah, yes and no. So what I find fascinating, and just the context of what you're talking about, I am a firm believer of kind of just the subconscious processing that is going on all the time. Things that we are so unaware of. And if you want to, you can kind of talk it into the context of sixth sense or a spiritual process. But there is something about the way that we process things and the way that we are in tune with these things. And so what you're describing, I would say, isn't abnormal. But also it's a different story for lots of different people. Some people say they get kind of really hot and kind of sweaty hands when they're talking about things. Some people say that they feel a kind of heat or a power kind of going through them. And again, depending on the context of that person and the upbringing they have, they'll describe it in different ways. Whether it's kind of the kind of fairies versus kind of the kind of internal kind of power lines versus, do you know what I mean? There's a whole load of different things going on. But I do find it fascinating in the context of, as you are processing this more, sharing it more, talking about it more, you're experiencing kind of this tangible process and this tangible link. And it would be fascinating to actually go, and I would encourage you to go and talk to someone professionally about it and say, look, this is what's going on. Can you help me understand this, digest it? Because I think that's where we talk about counselling and therapy within the mental health first aid training courses, within these mentality meets. Don't be afraid of it. And yet sometimes we still see counselling and therapy as something that other people do. You know, it's for them. And we don't necessarily see it as something that we should take on. But I would totally encourage you to look into it and just talk it through with some professionals and see what they suggest on it. It may be absolutely nothing. It may be something a little bit deeper. We have no idea. But you know what? Let's go back to what the chat bar's going on. There's so much going on out here, and we've got 5 minutes left. So Matt says, yeah, 12 men a day will be lost to suicide every day, which puts it back into context, and think it's now gone up to about 87 men a week from the 84 just a couple of years ago. Zara says that when she told colleagues, they were in awe and inspired her to encourage doing more mental health work. But about parents and friends, they were initially quite upset about it, and kind of thought that it had been a hidden part of herself for so long until she could begin to speak about it. Matt says, shared my story with peers at work across the UK, was really positive. Spoke out on local radio station Sky News about why I'm promoting mental health awareness in the workplace. And then he kind of says, but about 4 weeks later, had a massive panic attack because of the impact that I had on other people. And it just kind of suddenly hit him. And Matt, I find that contact just fascinating. Just that kind of process of being able to talk in that context, and really good on you. And just kind of hearing the impact that it then had on you afterwards. Krista says mixed. It's getting more acceptable to talk about it, but some people just don't get it. You know, I think that's so true, Krista. Matt's kind of going, yeah, it's a physical manifestation of your mental health. Based on my own experience, I found building resilience by exposing myself to those triggers has helped me over the years to reduce the impact or ability to accept it. Wayne's saying, I've shared my experience of depression and anxiety with colleagues in a couple of very large organisations. People have been really supportive, non-judgmental, although I feel that there is still quite a lot of stigma out there. Chris is then saying there's so little support out there for suicidal grief, and it comes with a whole more than just normal grief, because grief in itself is a beast, isn't it? It's different for every single person. Melissa then goes on to say, there's so much stuff going on. This is brilliant, guys. Thanks for all your engagement. How you see how people are kind of hitting in on this conversation. This is amazing. Melissa is a great advocate for counselling as a preventative measure, not just when we start to feel a need to have counselling. And Melissa, high five to you. I am totally on with that. Counselling and therapy is a preventative tool to mental health illnesses. It's one of those things that we should be doing on a much more regular basis than I believe we are. So it's brilliant. So guys, just amazing. We've got 3 minutes left, Harry. I so want this to go on for another hour or so, but we just don't have the time. So what I want to ask you is literally, if there is one piece of advice or information or encouragement that you can give to our audience today, around either talking about mental health or sharing your story or supporting other people if they see them, what is going to be the message that you want our audience to walk away with today?
I think there was a few questions on, or reasonings for coming to the session around workplace wellbeing. And what I found really powerful is when I first was exposed to the Project 84 activation, I didn't necessarily feel comfortable enough to share my story in full. I would say that kind of, I gave a bit more of a reasoning why. I wasn't able to do it yet. I didn't feel comfortable. It still felt quite far away from me. But what I did find extremely helpful and powerful was actually engaging with other people, sharing their stories verbally. So I started to go to more talks. So I'm a huge believer in like the power of storytelling and allowing spaces for people to just sit and completely separate themselves from whatever they're doing and just listen to someone. And every time I would hear someone share about their mental health and really open up. So I went to a lot of talks that were for men in central London. I remember them. And when people really got to the point of what they were saying, really exposed and made themselves kind of vulnerable to the audience, that was what inspired me to feel like it's okay to talk out. So anything as a business that you can do to create those environments where people will be exposed to real, genuine life stories, and not just saying like, we want people to talk out, actually really talk out and get to a point where they can actually make tangible impacts on someone else by hearing it. So yeah, making those spaces for people to talk to a point where there's going to be a tangible impact. And that can be across the board. It doesn't have to be senior leaders. Senior leaders is 100% a big one, but actually people coming into the organization, let's start it like at that point too, and across the board in different types of industries too. So yeah, creating those spaces for people to truly listen to real life stories. That
is brilliant. So let's talk about it more. Let's share with our work colleagues. Let's not be afraid of this. Let's begin to tackle those stigmas, tackle those discriminations, share our stories more. Mental health is impacting on 9 in 10 people at some point during the course of the year. Whether that's us experiencing it for ourselves or whether we are directly or indirectly supporting someone with mental health illnesses. 9 in 10 of us. I reckon maybe 10 in 10 of us. You never know. COVID-19 may have had something to do with that. But guys, we are at our 3:30 cutoff. So it's at this point that I want to say, I have been Peter Larkum. This has been Harry Corin. Thank you so much for joining us for Mentality Meets. Take care. God bless. And bye-bye now.
Thank you. See ya.
And that was our ending. So just another couple of bits from the chat, Harry going, Chris is going, yes, yes, yes. Melissa saying, fabulous session. Thank you so much. Matt saying thanks. Wayne saying thanks to you both. Harry, hats off to you. Vicky, great advice. Thank you, Harry. Your story is so powerful. Thanks for sharing. Chris is just saying, thank you so much. Speakers Collective, which I think is probably Joe, is saying, fabulous, Harry. Andy is then saying, top job. So it's just great stuff coming out. So thank you so much for your engagement in this. And if anyone is still on your chat bar or still on the call and you would like to become part of this conversation, please unmic yourself, introduce yourself to Harry, and we're just going to chat for another couple of minutes or so. If you want to, you don't have to. You might just want to go. It's kind of up to you. But Harry, how was that for you?
The time, how did it go so fast? I mean, I looked at the bottom corner and it was 24. I was like, that's not possible. No, I really, yeah, it's interesting. Like whenever you do share a bit more about your story, it always comes out differently. Like you can do it as many times as it still does not flow in a different way. It's really, yeah, it's interesting. It's amazing to see like people's reactions to it on the side, and I think just the style when you go back to it is really good. Yeah, 100%. I'd love to maybe share more about different aspects in the future.
No,
on the platform. 100%. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
I mean, I think what I find fascinating about these sessions, and it comes up again and again and again, is just how different every single one is, and the impact that it has on me and my experience as a mental health trainer, because I come to this whole journey as a mental health first aid instructor, as a mental health trainer, so not from that lived experience of mental health illnesses side of things. So to hear people's personal stories is just so insightful and so impactful for me, just to kind of begin to just hear how deep this goes and how diverse it is for every single person out there. But does anyone have any questions for Harry, seeing as we've got some time? Go on, Zara, what have you got?
Not a question so much, but just, thank you for sharing. It's really awesome. I completely agree with you. The more we share our stories, the easier it becomes for everyone else to share theirs. I just thought it was really interesting that I've been in like 4 or 5 meetings with you now, and that's the most I've heard from you on your story. And there's so much more to it than I think I'd heard when we just scratched the surface in the Beyond meetings. I'd definitely love to hear more about, you touched a bit there on how it had impacted you later in life, where you sort of didn't really acknowledge what was going on in your childhood until much, much later. I'd love to hear more about that and your recovery process.
Yeah.
Obviously, now's probably not the time for it.
We'd probably be here for another 2 days or so, if we can't get that now. But I do think it's fascinating. And like I said, Harry, there were umpteen questions that we could have dug into as we go on. But go on, you respond.
No, exactly. And it's always and we didn't get onto it, but I had like 2 points planned in that if we got onto the point around counselling and therapy, that actually I never felt that it was right for me growing up, because I was doing all the things that I was wanting to do as a young guy growing up. So therefore, why do I need to go to a counsellor? But the big reason for me why I didn't want to go to a counsellor is that I felt that I would need hundreds of sessions to ever be able to explain what's inside. So I never wanted to start the process because I knew I'd be there all day and I couldn't do that for hours and hours on end. So it's interesting as I kind of always try and work out the audience how much to share in the first instance. And that was something as well. At the beginning, I was always hesitant to do too much because it is even now, it's hard to know how it's going to sit with those people, right? So it's, there's so much in terms of that kind of process of looking back is so powerful.
I think it's one of those things that as you share more, you'll begin to find your groove. And what I mean by that is that you'll know where the boundaries are for how much of yourself you share, just for your own sanity as well, but also how much your audience can handle, and kind of just being able to find those barriers. But I loved just how open you were and how real it was, and you can tell from the chat just how engaged the audience were throughout the whole process on that. So just top job. So thank you very much. Matt, welcome to the conversation. How are you keeping?
Not so bad. No, all good. I was just going to say, to Harry's point about what we're saying about the sort of physical manifestations, for me, talking to people that have been through an experience like that is helpful. So I have a support group of people that have gone through various aspects of men's mental health specifically, but that's just because of where I'm at. But I've got friends that have tried to take their own lives. I've got people that have had impacts with different cancers and stuff. But having those people with that sort of support network for me helped. And it gives you somebody to talk to, and it's having somebody that sort of understands or at least appreciates where your head is at. Yeah. I don't know if you come across that, Harry, but
no, I completely agree. And that physical manifestation point is, I find it fascinating. It's not something that worries me as much. I actually am really, really intrigued to just understand it more. It's such a surreal. I mean, when I shared it for the first time, and I only read back on the article, and I put that I couldn't have anyone close to my neck or anything round, anything close to my neck. And I just put it, and I didn't even think that would be a point that would be one of the most powerful points in the article. But so many people responded around that. So it's clearly something that, and I never even thought of it, that's a shared thing. But there's something about it, and it's such a difficult thing to. So I am actually, Peter, working on with a therapist just to understand it a bit more. But it's really interesting. I don't know if that's something that I think it's quite. I mean, I don't have any data for this. I think it's extremely common for people to have those sorts of physical manifestations.
I think it'll be a lot more common than people than we realise. I agree.
Yeah, based on the conversation I've had with people, I've got one friend who drives past a tree where he basically, part of his suicide plan was to drive into that tree. He drives past that tree most days when he goes into the office, and he still sometimes gets that physical gut feel. He's not suicidal, he's worked through it and all the rest of it, but he still gets that physical moment of just, this is the tree, this is the point where I considered ending my life.
Yeah.
And for me, him sharing that with me was, and it was, for me, I've worked out over the years what the triggers are for me, and I've tried to manage them and build my resilience to them. But again, that's not for everybody, because you've got to go through that understanding and acceptance.
Yeah, no, I think that's.
All this conversation reminds me of a time probably about 20 years ago now, when I was in Germany, and we crossed the border from East Germany to West Germany, or West Germany to East Germany, but we passed the border at one of the checkpoints where they had the massive towers. And without realizing it, a car of 5 young people, so I was 20 at the time, so 19, 20 at the time, we stopped talking about a mile away from these towers until we were through the towers and about a mile the other side. There was something about that, the presence of that barrier, that made all of us just go, oh. And it's just a weird kind of context that places can do that, or memories can do that, and situations can do that. And there's stuff going on, isn't there? It's all a little bit
yeah. I have something similar. I have a very similar thing. So a friend of mine, he took his life on the railway. He walked from a level crossing up, and for a couple of years after, I took really, really weird routes around town to avoid going over that level crossing. And when I eventually did start using it again, because a friend moved to just the other side of it and I couldn't really avoid it, I found that every time I cycled over it, I held my breath. And I still do it now, and it's been nearly 9 years, and I still hold my breath going over it. It's almost like I'm not allowed to breathe there because he can't. It's such a weird association in my brain.
Amazing.
Odd.
So you know what? We should probably call this to a close. Otherwise, we're going to chat for hours, absolutely hours. So, guys, thank you so much for being part of Mentality Meets today. Harry, thank you so much for your openness, your honesty, and for sharing your story with us. It's been absolutely brilliant. You know what, guys? Take care.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good rest of your week and a great weekend.